Alright, parents, as promised, this is Miss Breland and I am back with another video. I want to thank you for helping your child this weekend with their historical fiction writing. I normally do not assign homework over the weekend unless it's a major piece that they're working on or some project, so I appreciate your support with that. Please let me know if you have any questions. Today in class, we learned how writers take one tiny scene, just a caption sentence from their storyboard, like you see here, and stretch it into multiple paragraphs like this, so it feels real. I'll tell you why I have two sides to that. But I'm going to show the kids how to stretch that out, and that's just one scene that I presented to you. Okay, some kids were asking, do we just write that one sentence? Is that, how our story is going to be built? And the answer is no. Of course, no. That caption is just a tiny seed. And so in this video, I'm going to show you and your child, again, what I showed today in class. I'm going to show you and your child the steps to grow this tiny seed or this caption for scene one of their stories into a full scene and stretch it out. And this will be a strategy or strategies that they can use when writing all the other scenes as well as any other narrative piece that they're working on. Okay? So, stretching out a story, going from a caption to this. Okay? There are many ways to do it. We're going to focus on using five strategies. Think of these like tools in a toolbox. Okay? Every paragraph, at least try anyway, should use at least one of these strategies that I'm going to show you. Okay? So first, let's talk about action. This is something that the readers can visualize. The writer is going to break down the character's movements step by step. What is that character doing step by step? And you want to be able to picture that happening. Okay? Another strategy they can use are using sensory details. This is definitely something that they should be using in their writing. We also call that show, not tell. We want to engage the reader's senses so that they can visualize what they're seeing in the story, sounds that they're hearing, smells they have, how something tastes, how something feels, the weather, all of that, right? It can be setting. It can be pretty much anything they're trying to describe. So the word choice is important. Adjectives are important. They want to be very vivid in their writing. All right, so description using show, not tell, or sensory details. All right, that's another way to stretch out the stories by adding that. But also, of course, you want to get the characters talking by using dialogue. This can also be a character talking out loud to him or herself. They can just say something without any character answering back. That's another way to grow that piece, all right, whether it be one scene or the entire story. Then another way that writers can grow their stories is by showing what the character is thinking or feeling on the inside, okay? And that could be something the character might be afraid of or fearing, what they remember, what they wonder, what they wish for. It could be using flashback, when they're thinking back about something, or flash forward, okay? So capturing their inner feelings, all right? Showing and not telling with that. And then the last strategy out of the five is realization or reaction. Okay, pull this up here so I don't have to have it overlapping. So this is where the writer will zoom in on a moment. And I almost described it today as like kind of slowing down. With something, it's like when action is moving so fast and then finally like something major happens and you just like stop and put it in slow motion, right? And you're zooming because you want to capture the tension of that moment. And so they zoom in on the moment the character figures out something, or if they want to show, the character feeling the weight of something that they realize, right? They want to show just how much it's impacting him or her, the character. And so that is a strategy that they can do. And so all of these strategies that I talked about, all 5 of these, I'm going to show you how I use those in my piece, and then how your child can use them as well. And so here's how you can coach your child step by step while they write. Think of it as moving from paragraph to paragraph, and I'm going to show you how to do that so kids can use these tools and the scenes can grow naturally. Okay? So, step 1, start by, don't tell your child, start with action. Don't start by explaining everything. Okay? Start with what the character is doing. All right? So, I'm going to put my story up here. Okay? I don't have a title for it yet. I'm still getting that figured out, right? And because I had different leads that I was playing around with, I have it on both sides because I kind of want to play around with how they mesh together or align with the rest of the story. So I'm going to start with this side right here. All right? And I'll read the lead just so they can flow together. It says, what if your night, and I started with the question lead, what if your nightmare didn't end when you opened your eyes? The quilt pressed against Lillian's cheek, still warm from sleep, when the first scream pierced the night. And so, in this sentence, okay, you want to, or in this instant, you want your child to imagine their character seeing what they're doing like a movie. What's the very first thing the camera would see them doing? Okay, I knew from this right here, the scene, my character was in bed. It's the middle of the night. It's late. She was asleep. She's waking up to screams of smoke. And so I'm imagining, what do I want to see her doing? What do I want the reader to see them doing? All right? And so from here, that's an action. I see her, in bed. Well, I don't mention that part. I'm showing she's got the quilt pulled up. And then hearing the scream in the night right here. But what I'm showing is that particular part. I can visualize that part here. So there's the action that I'm using in this particular scene. All right? Another thing is adding in sensory details or description by using show not tell. Describe what the character notices with their senses, whether it's something they see, sounds they hear, smells, weather, taste, touch. That is happening here, right? She's waking up to hear sounds of screams. She's smelling some smoke. But I need to stretch it out. I'm not just going to say she smelled smoke, right? Other things like that. But I'm going to show you how I did that and added in some other things too. All right, so after the action, tell your child, describe what the character notices with their senses. This is all in one scene. So at first it tangled with her dream, just another sound in the dark. But then came another, sharper, rising high above the stillness of her room. Lillian threw off the quilt and stumbled toward the window. Her bare feet slapped against the wooden floor as she pressed close to the frame. The air was heavy, different. A bitter smell scratched the back of her throat. Smoke slipped through the cracks and made her cough. So here, her bare feet slapped against the wooden floor. Can you visualize that? Can you hear that happening? Right? And so I want to be so descriptive that that sound is locked in their brain, right? And so I'm using a lot more words to describe that, and then to show not tell. And then also a bitter smell scratched the back of her throat, right? And I'm showing through descriptive details or sensory details how that smell, and then smoke slipped through the cracks, just helping that reader visualize there. So you might ask your child, what would your character see, hear, smell, or feel if they were really there? Add that to the paragraph, right? You want to include that, and it doesn't have to be just one thing by itself. It could be mixed, strategies mixed together. Because here, Lillian threw off the quilt and stumbled toward the window. That's action. That's action right there. I see her doing that. But then her bare feet slapped against the wooden floor. She pressed close to the frame. And this part right there, these are sensory details to be more descriptive, to describe. So you can ask your child that question. What does your character see or hear or smell or feel, right? Put that in a sentence there, okay? All right, so another strategy they can include in there, naturally, of course, is dialogue, okay? Dialogue is going to make it real. Even one line will help, okay? And so let me show you how I did that. But I'm going to continue to read the story naturally, so continue to flow together. Outside, the voices tumbled over one another, fast and jagged. She squinted into the darkness, straining to make out the words. Were they warnings? Cries for help? She couldn't tell, but fear threaded through every sound. Here we go. Mama? Daddy? Her voice cracked as she pulled back from the window and ran down the hall. See there, right there, Lillian's voice cracked as she ran toward the room. So ask your child, in the scene, right? In the scene, what would your character be talking about if talking to anyone, right? What's the first thing they would say out loud in that moment? Now, she has people outside of her window, right? So I didn't necessarily want her talking to them. There's no one else in the room with her. Her parents aren't home, right? Her brother's in another room. So I wanted her in that moment to be talking out loud for herself, not just thinking, but talking out loud. And so in this moment, she says, Mommy, Daddy. Her voice cracked as she pulled back from the window and ran down the hall. That's just kind of adding some action to that dialogue, that tag right there. That's where we add in the talking, okay? Now, it doesn't mean that it only can be one time throughout the scene, right? But it just so happens in my scene, she doesn't have very many people to talk to here. So I have to kind of make it align with that. All right, and also, one thing I mentioned to the kids today, but we will refine this, is punctuating dialogue correctly. In this case, this dialogue or this line right here is included with this paragraph because, one, this character is talking to herself. No one responds to her. If there were another speaker responding back to her right after that, I would have to put their line or their dialogue on a separate line under that. They have to be separated so that the reader can know who's talking and tell the difference. But in this case, this paragraph, because this paragraph is all about her, this character, then I can just include that information right after that. Now, had this been about some other action happening in the story about someone else, then I would have to change that. Okay, so here again, ask when your child is trying to write the dialogue, what's the first thing or something that your character will be saying out loud in that particular moment. So it doesn't have to just be first scene. They can think about that all the time. In this moment, what are they saying? What are they talking about? Right? There's going to be a lot more talking when it comes to this scene right here, but we're not going to talk about that today because they can carry that into every other scene that they're writing. Okay? All right. So now, next strategy we're going to think about is, sorry about that, inner thinking. Because I told the kids, don't let the dialogue dominate, the story. You don't want to just have characters talking. It doesn't move the story along, right? They're getting trapped with a bunch of conversations, and it feels overwhelming to the reader, right? To have talking going back and forth like a tennis match. So you want to keep the action going, let them visualize stuff, have them talking back and forth with each other, but also revealing what the character is thinking about or how they're feeling in the story. Let us peek into the character's mind. Their fears, their memories, their questions and wishes, okay? So let's go here and we can see part of that. So I'm going to read this part again. Mama, Daddy. Her voice cracked as she pulled back from the window and ran down the hall. She shoved the door opened the door, her heart pounding, half expecting to see them stirring awake, ready to explain everything. There's some more action in Show Not Tell. But the bed was empty. The quilt was still neatly folded at the end. So I got some action and some sensory details. Lillian froze in the doorway, gripping the frame. Here's where I'm slowing it down, my friends. The silence in the room pressed against her ears, louder than the chaos outside. Show Not Tell, sensory details. That's when she remembered. Mama had left earlier to pick up Daddy from his shift at the hospital. Okay, now I'm going to talk about this part right here, right? She's thinking about this part, something she's remembering right here. Okay, and then it goes on to say her eyes darted to the clock above the dresser. The hands glowed faintly in the moonlight. Past midnight. They should have been back by now. Her stomach tightened. Ooh, this line I love. This is my favorite part, right? This is definitely Show Not Tell, or I call it that, but this is showing something about her, not just telling. It's showing, the kid said, oh, it's showing how nervous she is, how scared she is. That's why we call it Show Not Tell. So instead of the reader announcing or a writer announcing she was scared, it's showing, well, what is the body doing of the character? What are the eyes doing? What are their thoughts? Well, when we get scared, we get a knot in our stomach, right? Or a lump in our throat, right? And so here I chose her stomach getting tight, right? And so that's a sensory detail that I wanted to add there. And I know we're thinking about inner thinking, and we're going to get there. So what's taking so long? Why aren't they here? And these are her thoughts. And so we talked today about, well, how is this different than how this is typed here? We noticed that this was italicized. And so this is showing the character's thinking or their thoughts, all right, when we're typing that out anyway. And so there we are revealing what it is the character's thinking about. So a writing tip, you can ask your child, well, if this happened to you, what would your thinking be in your head in that moment? How are you feeling? What's your body doing, right? And so you can reveal that, because it's not just the thinking, it can also be what they're feeling in that moment. You're showing and not telling that, okay? All right, and so then, lastly, you want to end with something that the character realizes or some type of reaction, right? This is the heart of the scene. And it actually kind of very strategically leads into the next part of the story. So they have to know when to stop, and then, in dramatic fashion, take the reader to a stopping point and before going into the next scene. So this is the heart of the scene. The moment the character figures something out, or they feel the weight of the problem. So here, going back here, that's what she remembered. Mama had left earlier to pick up Daddy from his shift at the hospital. This is her realization. Something has come to her, and then the weight of it, okay? The weight of it then is showing up down here. Okay? So that's when she remembered. Mama had left early to pick up Daddy from his shift. But now it's past midnight and they weren't back. So to help your child stretch out their scene using a realization or reaction, ask them, what does the character realize at the end of this scene? Or how did they react to what just happened? Here, we can see it here, right? Her chest is tight. She feels like the weight of the world is on her. She's hurting because she's feeling like something ain't right, and her stomach is tightening. Ask them that. What do they realize, and how are they reacting to that? Okay? Make that be the closing. All right? This could be the closing part of that. And as I mentioned, in dramatic fashion, it can lead the reader to the next part. So taking all of that, again, I didn't go through every one and stop and highlight it, but I have a mix of strategies in there to help stretch it out. And each paragraph can be at least 1 or 2 strategies, right? But I just make sure it flows together so it's not an overwhelmingly amount of one thing in particular in a paragraph. So when you look at your child's writing, you should see the action starting out the scene so they can see, well, what am I visualizing? What is the character doing, right? And then what the character is noticing. Dialogue, we'll include some of that. So characters speaking, their inner thinking, fears, memories, questions, all right, wishes, and then a reaction, the heart of the moment. Okay, not every scene is going to be exactly 5 paragraphs. I'm not putting a number on that. But these steps, or these strategies, shall I say, because they don't have to necessarily go in that particular order, they're going to help your child stretch the writing so it doesn't feel too short, right? It should not just be a bunch of action and them telling the reader everything they should be seeing happening. Nothing but action, nothing but action. It has to be a healthy mix of all of these so that the reader can feel like they're visualizing, that they're experiencing the story, they're hearing characters talking, they're feeling things that the character's feeling. That's all the stuff that they want, okay? So parents, your role, my ask is not that you're writing this for them, all right? My ask is if you will ask the right questions, okay? What's your character doing? What are they noticing? What are they seeing? What are they smelling? What might they say? What are they saying in this moment? What are they thinking, or what are they feeling? What do they realize? Or what's their reaction to whatever just happened, which, wrapped up the scene? Okay? These questions, asking those questions, will guide your child to use those strategies as practice, and they just have to start and try it. Okay, and be intentional about where each one is being used. Okay, and so I want to thank you for supporting your writer. I can't wait to see how scene 1, the entire scene 1, just 1, turns out. Okay, now if your writer is ambitious, because they have their storyboard all mapped out for 5 scenes and they want to continue to go, what I do ask is that they indicate scene 2 in their writer's notebook by putting scene 2. That way, when I'm conferencing with them, or if they have to refer back to a certain scene for something, then it'll be marked and they don't have to guess, right? They'll know where it starts and begins, okay? I hope that this video helps you support your child, and I hope that I did a great job of explaining the why, or the how, not just the why, but the how behind. I took this 1 sentence caption for scene 1, and I turned that caption into this multiple paragraphs and stretched it out using a mix of these different strategies that I showed you here. Okay, and I hope that the prompts or the questions to ask was also helpful. I'll include a list of those question prompts in the electronic message that I'll send out to you. Okay, hope everyone has a great weekend. Continue to refer back to this video for supporting them with other scenes that they are writing. Thank you so much.